Hello, I'm Mark from Moto-Tek, and today I'm going to talk to you about verticutting and scarifying, and then I'm going to focus in on a new innovation in verticutting for the homeowner enthusiast. So here I have two Scarifying machines commonly available in the UK, both made by Hyundai. On this side I've got electric version, corded, and on the other side I have got petrol version. What I'm going to do now is talk through the various cartridges and attachments you can get for these machines and when these attachments are typically to be used. I should say that it's coming into winter here in the UK. It's very cold and the grass has stopped growing, so you would not typically use these type of procedures in this season. This just happens to be when I'm making the video. You would use these types of attachments in the growing season, typically from spring through to autumn. Okay, so we take a look at the various attachments, cassettes. The first is this type of cassette, and this is typically called a dethatching cassette, and this is used for quite harsh cultivation of lawn, typically in spring or in autumn, when you want to really remove thatch from the lawn. It has rigid metal blades, and the idea here is that these rotate and dig quite deep into the soil, maybe 5 to 10 millimeters, and in that process it pulls up all thatch and dead material. Also during that process you create quite deep grooves in the soil typically, and these grooves are ideal for overseeding, so putting new seeds on the grass and growing new grass. Next type of cassette is this one with these spring tines. Sometimes this is called a power rake or a raking cassette, but in other terminology this is also a type of scarifying cassette as well. These blades, these tines can be quite aggressive on the lawn. They will tear into the grass and tear into the ground. The idea is to remove debris from the lawn and to scarify the lawn. But this is a little bit more gentle than the solid dethatcher. So this will remove some thatch, it will remove debris, but typically you would use the dethatching cartridge to ahead of doing an overseeding. What we have next is a new innovation for this type of small homeowner machine, and this is a verticutting cartridge. Now typically these are only available for very expensive professional machines, and you don't typically see these for homeowner enthusiast machines like these. This is a new development which I've made, and this is a verticutting cartridge. Now the idea of this cartridge, this is designed to run only in the grass canopy, in the sward. It's not designed to cut into the soil, it should stay above the soil, and the idea of this cartridge is that it vertically cuts the grass. It removes any grass which is growing horizontally or not growing vertically. It helps to remove poa annua, and it helps to tiller and create new growth where it cuts stolons and rhizomes if you have those types of grasses. I'll talk more about this in detail shortly. Finally, and for this electric machine, we have a brushing cassette. More typically this type of brush is used for astroturf, an artificial grass, but equally if you adjust the height settings correctly, this can be used quite effectively on normal grass as well. It's obviously the least intensive of the four different cartridges, so this can be used for brushing the grass, removing leaves, removing debris, and it should cause minimal damage to the grass. So if I go over to this side and we look at this petrol driven machine, so first up we have the dethatcher cartridge, and you can see this is a bit heavier duty. It's a heavier build, it's a heavier duty piece of equipment because this is a more powerful machine. It can cut deeper into the soil. It has 200cc petrol engine, but you can see in principle it's the same type of approach that we have for the electric machine. It's got solid blades there, 2 millimeters wide, and this is used for aggressive dethatching prior to reseeding the lawn. Then have spring-tine Scarifying attachment. Again, you can use this for raking, but again, it's quite aggressive, so depending on the height setting that you use, this will also provide quite an aggressive scarifying effect as well. Not as aggressive as the solid blades, but this is good for removing material from the lawn. It's quite aggressive. And finally, for this machine, we have a custom made verticutting cassette, especially designed and made for this machine. And again, as for the electric machine, this is designed for cultivating of the grass during the growing season. This can be used quite frequently, perhaps every 1 to 2 weeks during the growing season, depending on how strong the lawn is growing and depending on how thick the lawn is. Again, this is designed to remove debris from the lawn, but principally to cut vertically and to encourage new growth and thickening of the lawn. Okay, first let's take a look at the Hyundai electric machine. This is 1800 watt corded version. If we turn him over, we can see the verticutting cartridge is now being fitted. This is quite easy to do with simple Allen key here. What's really important about the design of this verticutting cartridge is the sharpness of the blades, the spacing of the blades, and also the height adjustment of the blades on this particular machine. And they've all been optimized to work with this particular machine. The machine has 5 height settings here, and with the Scarifying cartridge, typically these height settings are going to vary between about +5 and -15 millimeters with the adjustment here. With the verticutting blade, however, we don't want to go below the soil height, so I've optimized the design here and the height settings and the blade design. When we use this adjustment, we can go from, say, +25 down to around 0, so we don't want to go below soil level. The idea is not to go into the soil. So what I'll do is give a demonstration of how this works on the grass here. Okay, I've now dropped the machine down onto setting number 1. Okay, so that was a pass on setting number 1. You can hear that the machine is having absolutely no trouble whatsoever cutting through the surface of the grass, no attenuation in the blade speed. And if I have a look at this, you know, what I'm seeing is a mixture of dead material from the bottom of the grass, and I'm also seeing some nice clean cuts as well. So this is the type of result we're kind of looking for when we do verticutting. We don't want huge amount of material in the grass box tearing through the grass and pulling loads up. We just want nice clean cuts through the material just on the surface of the soil, and pulling up dead material and cleanly cutting grass at the base to encourage tillering and new growth. So here we are with the Hyundai Petrol Scarifier / Verticutter. I've got the blades set here at more or less the highest setting, and I'm going to run up and down the grass in the same way as with the electric one, and we'll see what is the effect of the verticutting, what's collected in the grass box and how this works. Okay, so if once again we take a look at the contents of the grass box, what we can see is small amount of grass, pretty similar to when we had the electric scarifier on the highest, the Verticutter on the highest setting, and what we can see is a mixture of dead grass and cut blades, and we can see again that the blades are cut very cleanly. We could go a bit lower, and if this was the growing season, I would sneak the cut height of the Verticutter down until it's just touching the soil, and that's where I would leave the setting. And the great thing about the Hyundai is the continuously variable cut height, which is a convenient factor. What we can see here is we've flipped the machine over, and we can see now the Verticutter cassette, and can see that the blades are all perfectly clean, so this tells us that the blades have not gone into the soil. There's no marks or damage, of course, on the blades because they're only cutting through the grass layer. This is what we'd expect for the experiment we've just done. Obviously, in real use in the growing season, we'd squeak this down until this was just touching the soil surface, but not more. We don't want the Verticutter blades to dig into the soil itself. That can cause damage to the blades, and that's not the aim of verticutting. The aim is not to scarify and dig into the ground. It's just to cut into the grass sward itself and promote new growth, and remove any debris or material which is just in the grass sward layer itself. It's not designed to have a very heavy effect on dethatching or removing thatch. Of course, it will remove a small amount of thatch from the very surface of the lawn, but if you want to do a full-scale dethatching and overseeding, you would use the solid dethatching cartridge. Okay, then to summarise, what we've created here is basically a really good value for money and well-performing verticutting system for the keen home gardener. Previously, these type of verticutting systems were only available on very expensive lawn care equipment and professional equipment. And if we look at these two machines, I've chosen them because they're widely available and they are good value for money. The Hyundai, for example, costs around £160 in the UK, and for that you get the standard attachments that you saw, and obviously on top of that we can have the Verticutter cassette added in there as well. It's a fantastic machine, good value for money, has good adjustment features and very robust, ideal for, let's say, small to medium sized garden or people with a budget consideration. The Hyundai machine, this is obviously a more expensive machine. This is designed for, let's say, medium to large size gardens, but this is still good value for money machine. This type of machine, this particular model, is available from Hyundai, but also Sherpa make a very similar model, different colours, but essentially the same machine. Retails for around £360, something like that in the UK. And for that you get the standard cartridges that you've seen here. It's power driven, it's very versatile, and then we can obviously add on top of that the Verticutter cartridge. So this approach represents great value for money, and it brings the true verticutting technique. So that's not verticutting or trying to verticut with a Scarifier blade. This is verticutting with a proper cassette of sharpened Verticutter blades. It brings that technology and that approach within reach for the enthusiastic homeowner garden care enthusiast.